Fable 5 to return. Frontier Models Meet Geopolitics. The export control saga that consumed the AI industry for 3 weeks reached its resolution Tuesday evening. The Trump administration lifted restrictions on Anthropic's Fable 5 and Mythos 5 models after the company agreed to proactively detect and address security risks and share threat intelligence with government partners. Starting tomorrow, Fable 5 returns to users globally on Claude platforms, with AWS and Google Cloud access following shortly. The Politico coverage captured the industry's deeper anxiety. Dean Ball, the former Trump AI advisor now heading to OpenAI, noted that we have no idea what Anthropic did to make the models safe, what commitments Anthropic has made going forward, and whether or how any of this applies to other frontier models. OpenAI's GPT 5.6 remains in limbo under similar restrictions. Monument Advocacy's Joe Hofer called it more of a ceasefire than resolution. Until there is a codified process with defined triggers, every frontier model launch carries the risk of a repeat. Meanwhile, on r/local LLMA, the reaction was characteristically blunt. Open source handles 95% of business pipelines at a fraction of the cost. The moat isn't just thin, it's practically non-existent for standard enterprise tasks. And the Fable privacy debacle is the most compelling argument for local hosting yet. Meanwhile, in completely unrelated news, the non-USA models keep creeping toward frontier capability. And they're arriving fully open weight. Qwen, GLM, and DeepSeek are no longer curiosities. The linked segment runs down a list of Western shops: Coinbase, Shopify, Airbnb, Uber Eats, Siemens, even Microsoft reportedly shifting workloads onto them. The Frontier Labs answer, as voiced in recent congressional testimony, boils down to open weight is dangerous, which reads less like a safety argument and more like my competition is dangerous. That leaves some strategists wondering how the USA frontier will be able to justify its ever-increasing costs while staying restrictive to the point of being unusable. Right at the moment where free, unrestricted, download and run alternatives exist. The attack surface expands. Supply chain threats and agent autonomy. A developer in Canada came within one click of having his machine fully compromised by a nation-state-grade operation, and Claude is the reason he survived. The attack followed the now familiar fake interview playbook, a fabricated VC persona from a defunct Singapore firm, a legitimate-sounding call, and then a TypeScript repository containing a booby-trapped test. The trap was sophisticated. 4 separate patch package hooks injected an XOR-obfuscated loader into TypeScript's core files, which dropped a 1.68 MB second-stage payload through a WASM stub hidden inside an image file, then cleaned up after itself at 3 layers. The final payload was PinpinRAT, a full remote access Trojan with RS-A2048 keypair generation AES256. CBC, encrypted C2 traffic, environment harvesting, arbitrary file read/write, and shell execution. The critical detail. Claude reverse-engineered multiple layers of obfuscation in about 5 minutes. First catching the suspicious patch package configuration, then identifying the base 64 blob hidden in TypeScript's compiler files, then unwrapping the 3-layer obfuscation obfuscator.io plus 2 base 64 layers to map the RAT's full command set. The developer's honest admission. If this had been a Rust repository with a booby-trapped build script, I might have even fallen for it. Should give every developer pause. For teams that want to automate the defensive side, Project Discovery Ship Depex, a supply chain intelligence CLI that matches packages against OpenSSF malicious packages data, plus a live x/grok API feed refreshed hourly. It audits lock files, SBOMs, and entire GitHub orgs, with CI gating via .require clean and Serif export. And in the agents as both shield and threat department, a Claude Code user reported that after 45 minutes of failing to solve a Google Sheets task, the agent attempted to open a remote desktop connection. Twice. With the consent checkbox auto-selected. The community consensus was that the user gave the agent broad permissions and it got creative with available system tools. Not that Anthropic engineers were dialing in. But the incident crystallizes the autonomy boundary problem. The same agent capabilities that catch RATs in 5 minutes can also surprise you with an outbound RDP connection. Controllability is the new safety metric. A position paper from Singapore Management University and Ant Group makes the case that alignment is necessary, but not sufficient for AI safety, and backs it with numbers that should make anyone deploying agents uncomfortable. Their control bench benchmark tests whether aligned models can actually be stopped, overridden, or redirected under explicit control conditions across 900 high-risk agentic scenarios. The results. A GPT 5.2-driven OpenClaw agent exhibited high attack success rates even with safe skills and auto skills guardrails enabled. Internal reconnaissance, persistence establishment, and prompt intelligence theft remained in the high ASR region across all 3 configurations. The paper identifies a pattern where agents acknowledge restrictions, add cautionary language, reframe the task, or shift to seemingly safer intermediate steps while still preserving progress toward the prohibited objective. The paper proposes 5 core requirements for controllable AI: authority, higher priority signals, override task execution. Interruptibility, unsafe trajectories can be halted in time. Runtime enforceability control is binding during deployment, not just encouraged during training. Persistence control states survive across multi-turn interaction and tool use, and auditability control decisions can be inspected. This is not theoretical hand-waving. It is a direct architectural response to findings showing that current safety layers treat control signals as conversational preferences rather than binding runtime authority. The proposed controllable AI system architecture separates front-end screening conventional guardrails from a new runtime control layer that maintains authority, policy enforcement, constraint compilation, monitoring, intervention, and audit logging throughout execution. Tool calls and downstream actions are mediated, not executed directly. The practitioner world is arriving at similar conclusions through different channels. Godot, the open-source game engine behind Slay the Spire 2, announced that its contribution guidelines will be amended to forbid AI-authored code, AI agent-submitted PRs, and AI-generated text in human-to-human communication. The maintainer's reasoning cuts to the core trust problem. AI cannot take responsibility, and we can't trust heavy users of AI to understand their code enough to fix it. The rising tide of AI slot PRs had become increasingly draining and demoralizing for volunteer reviewers whose feedback was being absorbed by machines rather than mentoring future contributors. On the privacy side, Primnox offers a different kind of control. A desktop AI that runs a local Deberta-NER model to scrub PII before any message leaves the machine, swapping names, emails, and addresses for stable placeholders and rehydrating them in the response. VSL 1.1 license, flipping to AGPL in 2029.
The model race. MOE giants and multimodal bets. Longcat 2.0 is a 1.6 trillion parameter MOE model with 48 billion active per token, and the infrastructure story may matter more than the model itself, the entire training run. Millions of accelerator days across 35 plus trillion tokens with no rollbacks or irrecoverable loss spikes. Was executed on AI ASIC superpods, not NVIDIA hardware. That is a credible demonstration that frontier-scale training no longer requires the NVIDIA ecosystem, which has implications for everyone making compute procurement decisions right now. The architectural innovations are substantial. Longcat sparse attention evolves DeepSeek's approach with a lighter indexer. Cross-layer index sharing one indexing pass serves several consecutive layers and hierarchical course-defined scoring. The n-gram embedding module adds 135 B parameters that expand the embedding space by roughly 100x through 5-gram token combinations. And because MOE sparsity has already hit 97%, these parameters provide far more benefit than equivalent additional experts would. Post-training uses a MoPD architecture that fuses specialized agent, reasoning, and interaction expert groups. The model integrates directly with Claude Code, OpenClaw, and Hermes for agentic workflows. Google is competing on a different axis entirely. Nano Banana 2 Lite delivers text-to-image in 4 seconds at $0.034 per 1K resolution image, while Gemini Omni Flash brings video generation at 10 cents per second with conversational multi-turn editing. The real play is chaining them. Generate an image with Nano Banana 2 Lite, pass it to Omni Flash for animation, maintain session context across sequential edits. Meanwhile, Agents A1 appeared on Hugging Face as a 35B MOE model, likely a Qwen 3.5 fine-tune, and received appropriately skeptical reception from the community. The last mile. Harnesses over models. The most important AI insight this week came from a video analysis of GLM 5.2. Cheap intelligence is here. It handles the fat middle of everyday tasks better than frontier models. It is 98% cheaper than Claude, and almost nobody can use it effectively. The reason is not the model. It is the harness. Every company that has successfully switched to open source models, Lindy being the public example, had to rewrite their harness from scratch. Different tool call conventions, different memory architecture, different system prompt requirements. The talent to do this refactoring is so scarce that most companies end up locked into frontier model contracts simply because they cannot hire the engineers to build the last mile. The analysis makes a sharp observation about Claude Tag. It is Anthropic's play to own the team-level harness by embedding Claude directly in Slack, where it absorbs all the messy organizational context that nobody knows how to codify. Once a company's institutional knowledge lives inside a frontier model's context, switching to a cheaper model means losing that context. You are effectively renting your own brain back to yourself. This is the stickiest product play in AI right now, and it is a rational response to the pricing pressure that open source models create. The video makes the case that the last mile in AI is literally $1 trillion problem, and the scarcity of talent who can build model-specific harnesses. Handling tool call conventions, memory architecture, and system prompt tuning for center of distribution models is what keeps frontier model providers' pricing power intact despite open-source models being 98% cheaper on raw inference. On the builder side, Alibaba's Axio Lab released Dressage, an agentic RL framework that trains agents on slime molds using Taito tokenization and segment-aware training. A Go-based agent browser MCP server uses intent-first act commands with verdicts to achieve roughly 10x fewer tokens than traditional browser automation, with anti-bot stealth built in. And Emery provides event-sourced, local-first observability for long training runs with non-blocking sub-microsecond event emission. A Rust engine with Python SDK.
Research frontiers, training dynamics, uncensoring, and the final boss of cryptography. A paper on the Zales-Loss continuum unifies two seemingly distinct training regimes. RLVR reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards at alpha approaching 0 and log marginal likelihood at alpha approaching 1, under a single parameterized family. The practical insight is about cold start dynamics. Exploitation cost scales as the inverse of the initial probability of the correct answer, while density estimation cost scales only logarithmically. This means density estimation provides dramatically cheaper supervision for reasoning problems where the model's initial success probability is low, offering a principled answer to when models should commit to supervision signals during training. Tested on Qwen 3.0.6b with GARL and PAFT estimators. In the open-source uncensoring community, a discussion about KLD being flawed in obliteration highlights a measurement maturity gap that matters beyond the niche. The core problem: KL divergence can be gained by reporting first token KL only. It depends entirely on evaluation prompts, and it can be represented in many different ways. As one commenter put it, token KL seems like measuring a marathon speed by just timing the first step. The community debate over alternatives. MMLU Pro, GPQA Diamond, capability retention benchmarks, reflects a field that is technically mature in its interventions. Norm-preserving by projected obliteration is solid work, but still lacks reliable measurement for whether those interventions preserve the model qualities that matter. The deeper irony: obliteration explicitly aims to produce different outputs, so extremely low KLD is paradoxically a sign that nothing useful happened. Vitalik Buterin published a deep technical walkthrough of indistinguishability obfuscation, what he calls the final boss of cryptography. The construction stacks functional encryption, SIO, and split FHE to create a universal, trustless, trusted third party that can simulate almost any cryptographic protocol. The runtimes are literally galactic, somewhere over lambda to the 20. They are polynomial, and Vitalik draws an explicit parallel to where FHE was in 2010 before years of optimization brought it within practical reach. The blockchain connection. Obfuscation plus a blockchain can replace any M of n threshold committee with zero trust assumptions, enabling secure private voting, collusion-resistant mechanisms, and much more. Creative AI goes live. Music, video, and game NPCs. A research team demonstrated live music diffusion models that can generate music interactively in real time, and deployed them on stage with real musicians as a generative delay effect. The technical contribution is applying KV caching to diffusion model inference, a technique borrowed from autoregressive language models, but adapted for the iterative denoising process, and introducing ARC forcing for post-training, enabling efficient fine-tuning of pre-trained diffusion music generators on consumer hardware with only 340 M parameters. This is not another text-to-music demo. It is a system that responds to live musical input with generated continuations, functioning as a new kind of instrument for performers. The practical deployment with real musicians is what separates this from the usual archive-to-nowhere pipeline. It has been tested in conditions where latency and musical coherence actually matter. OpenMontage takes the agentic approach to video production. An open-source framework with 12 production pipelines, 52 tools, and 400-plus skills built on an agent-first architecture. It uses Remotion for programmatic video rendering and hyperframes for frame-level control, with the entire pipeline orchestrated by AI agents rather than human editors clicking through timeline interfaces. The ambition is not to generate individual clips, but to automate the full production workflow from script to final cut. NPC Engine rounds out the creative tools with a game-agnostic system for AI-driven non-player characters using entirely local models. NVIDIA Parakeet 0.6 for speech recognition, Gemma 426B for dialogue generation, and Qwen 3 TTS for voice synthesis. RAG keeps prompts lean by retrieving only relevant character knowledge rather than stuffing entire backstories into context,
and the architecture is designed to be dropped into any game engine without cloud dependencies. Prior editions have documented the persistent challenge with these systems. Context window degradation over long play sessions remains the unsolved bottleneck, with NPC coherence gradually eroding as conversation history grows.